Well, here we are. The movie from 2020 that single-handedly caused the world to stop going to the movies. Bloodshot for me was unfortunately the last movie that I actually got to see in theaters, because this movie came out on March 13th, 2020, and on March 15th of the same year, the United States went into lockdown. Now, usually I'm a pretty big fan of watching bad movies. They usually have some kind of charm or funny element, whether it be intentional or not, that makes them somewhat watchable on the low end. But with Bloodshot, it's a different story. This movie is so middle of the road, so bland, so boring and forgettable that I'm not really surprised that nobody ever talks about it. So put yourself back together and buckle up, because whether you want to or not, you're about to remember the movie Bloodshot. The plot of Bloodshot in a nutshell is, he's a soldier who is killed and his body is donated to a facility called Rising Spirit Technologies. There, he is reborn as a super soldier with nanites replacing his blood so he can basically regenerate like Wolverine. He has no memories of his past life until he remembers that he had a wife who was killed, and then he goes on a revenge mission to murder the man responsible. To nobody's surprise, it turns out that the man in charge is actually planting false memories, so Bloodshot will basically be his own personal hitman. Now, I've seen a lot of movies that I would call predictable, but Bloodshot brings it to a whole new level. The moment after Mr. Bloodshot wakes up, we are introduced to the rest of the characters in this movie, and it's pretty obvious from the get-go to tell exactly what role each of them is going to play. One of the first major problems with this movie is Guy Pearce's character. His whole plan is to sell the Bloodshot technology to the highest bidder for warfare, even though it is said multiple times that innocent people will die because of it. This makes zero sense in the context of this world. He already runs a multi-billion-dollar company that is helping US soldiers recover with cybernetic enhancements. And he spent literal billions on creating Bloodshot, and he just wants to sell it for more billions? He's already extremely rich, and clearly the US is using him and spending money on all of his research and development. But I guess villains got a villain, even when it makes no sense. Then we meet the two henchmen-like characters, and one of them lost his eyesight and has all these cameras that are linked to his optic nerve, which allows him to basically see everything at once. Then we meet Mr. Legless, who's a Navy SEAL that apparently took out Bin Laden. What's funny about the Legless guy is the fact that he hates Bloodshot, even though it's never specifically said why. For whatever reason, anytime he gets the chance, he is just absolutely dumping all over Bloodshot, which, to be fair, if I had to work with Vin Diesel in any scenario, I'd probably want to jump off a building, so I kind of get it. And then there's KT, which is just KT, the vague love interest who's absolutely fucked over when it comes to these enhancements. One guy has metal legs and can run super fast, and also has like this weird spine insert that allows him to hook up to half of a mech suit. The other guy literally has eyeballs everywhere, including drones that he can send up into the sky and see everything at once. But KT, oh nah, she just got messed up from some chemicals and now she has to breathe through this weird thing on her chest. The movie spends the first 45 to 60 minutes of its hour and 49-minute runtime showing us the loop of him waking up, discovering his powers, getting a memory back, and then going on the hunt for the man in the memory. But then a little over halfway through the movie, KT, the vague love interest, decides that enough is enough and she can't resist the charm of Vin Diesel any longer. And then this is where one of the only redeemable characters is introduced. Winston from New Girl shows up as a hacker tech guy who joins the two of them. But what's so glorious and wonderful about his inclusion in this movie is that for whatever reason, the casting department decided to make him have a British accent. And it is one of the funniest things in this movie, because you have all these straight-laced people like Vin Diesel and Guy Pearce and all the side characters that are just like on a mission and they're straight-laced through and through, and then Winston is just there hamming it up, just having a great time. And I gotta be honest, it's probably the only enjoyable moments of this movie is when he's on screen. I am actually struggling to talk about this movie because there is so little that actually happens in its almost 2-hour runtime. But what we can talk about is the action scenes, because with someone like Dom Toretto in this, you know we're in for a treat.
You serious?
The very first action scene takes place in a tunnel, and for whatever creative reason they decided, the whole thing has an extremely difficult to see red tint over it. This fight scene is so incredibly hard to watch, and I mean that physically, because my eyes were hurting, not just from the lighting, but also the CGI in this movie. On top of that, in every single action sequence, all of the dialogue that is clearly ADR'd in post sounds like voice lines from a video game.
Right behind you, dropping in.
You're on my way. Keep him busy. I'll be on you in 3, 2, get clear.
And it never, ever gets better than this. Every single action scene or fight sequence in this movie looks like a cutscene or a QuickTime event from a PlayStation 5 video game. This actually kind of makes a lot of sense because the director's background is in visual effects, but he's worked on big titles such as BioShock Infinite, Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2, and Mass Effect 2. What I think is the hardest thing to watch about this movie is that when you think about the plot for longer than 2 seconds, it completely falls apart. The whole plan is to keep wiping Bloodshot's memory and implanting new ones so he'll be fueled by revenge to kill the person who killed his wife.
I have several questions.
Why not just make new memories where he's extremely loyal to you already? Why not just give him memories of being a war hero who died, and this is a second chance, and there's also some bad guys that he needs to take out for the good of America? Why not put this technology into a robot that you can just simply control? There is a lot of different ways that you could go about using this technology, but it seems pretty silly to put it in a guy who's fueled by revenge. There is even a line in this movie where Guy Pearce says to Vin Diesel, "Revenge is what makes a man like you exceptional." Hey, maybe pick a different guy? It's just so painfully obvious what this movie is going to do and exactly how it's going to do it. Now, it might feel like because of the length of this video and the almost 2-hour length of the movie that there are crucial elements that I'm forgetting to talk about. I can guarantee you there is not. I'm honestly not really surprised that nobody remembers this movie. It feels like an 8-episode miniseries, but we only got to watch the last 4, and that was it. Overall, Bloodshot is almost so bad it's good, but because it's more boring and bland than anything, it falls more into the just plain garbage category instead. But hey, at the very least, this means we probably won't have to see Vin Diesel pop up in any more superhero movies, so at least something good came from this movie.